Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn, and a very special guest. Delighted to be joined yet again by Laurence Fox. How are we doing, Laurence?
Hi, Andrew. I'm very good, thanks. How are you doing?
Amazing. And I'll tell you what, last time I almost spoke to you was during Trump's inauguration. I managed to watch the whole glorious thing with Elon Musk, and obviously his son was front and center of all of that. Why did you go and see it?
Well, I was invited by the Heritage Foundation, and I wanted to go. It's probably the most, the more I think about it, the more I think that if Harris had won, then we would be seeing that would have been the end of America as we know it. So I think it was a very seminal and important time in history, and I was very lucky to be invited, and I was very happy to witness it all and see the optimism of America in stark contrast to the optimism here, I think. So it was just a, hugely wonderful, lovely experience.
Yeah, it certainly looked. I mean, the glorious moments and the whole sort of sense of hope that the whole nation seemed to show on that. You didn't actually manage to get as close as you were hoping. What happened there?
Well, obviously it was meant to be held outside, so there were 220,000 tickets. I think people who went, and it all got moved into a 20,000 seater arena, which I did get into for the rally for the first day, but it was even with preferential treatment and with the heritage people helping, it was still quite a crush. And the idea of facing that the next day in -2 degree heat was much less appetizing than and ice storm was much less tantalizing than the offer of watching it in Kid Rock's bedroom.
I love
Sorry,
it. How on earth did you get into Kid Rock's bedroom? I saw you posting about that. What was the story behind that?
well, Calvin is friends with Kid Rock now, so he got us in there, and we sat and smoked cigars and drank Baileys and coffee. So it was I think a win all round, really. The only bad part of it was bumping into the news agents who were staying in the same hotel.
Yes, that's always the way, isn't it? Extraordinary. The other extraordinary thing is last night. I don't know if you stayed up to watch it, but the Super Bowl. Are you a Super Bowl fan?
I am, but I didn't start to watch it last night. Last night I was in the process of collapsing after a very long week, so I didn't manage to stay up and watch it. But I caught all the controversies this morning.
Well, what was extraordinary is Trump was the first president, it wasn't he, to attend the Super Bowl, which I find extraordinary. His reception was fantastic, great approval from the crowd, but Taylor Swift actually got booed.
Well, I think we're seeing now that the media. Sorry, I'm just going to silence my phone. Now that the media have can no longer control the narrative that Trump's a Nazi and all of those sorts of things. People are less or buy the narrative in the case of Kamala Harris to the tune of 2.5 billion quid. Now that they can no longer do that, it's very obvious that all of the policies that Trump has chosen are 80% policies, and the Democrats live in a 20% land. So it's no wonder the man literally should be on Mount Rushmore already. I would say he's saved America, and these policies that are being shoved down our necks in Britain and across and have been across the West. America's now going to decapitate the woke hydra, thankfully. Are not popular policies. No right-thinking normal person believes in any of it, and it's great to see that he's going to be cheered. Taylor Swift came out for Kamala Harris and she got booed, and that goes to show, she was very clear in her statement that she was coming out for Kamala Harris because of abortion or what they call reproductive healthcare rights now, which is just another piece of leftist shindiggery of changing the meaning of words. Call it what it is.
Yeah, well, and she did. But previously in her documentary, she was advised never to side with political side because basically you'll divide your audience. It's rather the Dixie Chicks, I think, had a similar sort of thing. They came out and sided with one side politically, and as a result, their album sales dropped.
Yeah, well, that's what's again, but it's so great about Trump. This guy is alienating well, not half, it turns out, but half the country are not going to fundamentally agree with him. He's been put. One of the things that really struck me about him actually was his constant references to service, his service to the people, and it's very genuine. You can't. It's very hard to fake authenticity. people can do it, and many have done over the years, but it's hard to do. And he comes across as an extremely genuine person. And what's a 78-year-old guy got to gain from doing this? Not much, other than a deep and profound sense of patriotism and a love of his country and a desire not to see that it utterly destroyed, which is what he has done.
Yeah, no, sure. And interesting, his approval rating, even in his second term, it's higher than his first term. And I was watching yet again the wonderful Roger Stone documentary and about his contribution as to how he molded Trump. What do you make of Trump, the man?
I think he comes across as a very, I mean, look, you can measure a man by his children in a lot of ways. And he looks like he's been a really good father to them. He's not perfect, no one is, but I get the sense that he's actually he's very intelligent. He's very instinctual, and he's a deeply, deeply patriotic man, and he genuinely sees himself as, I think, post both the 2020 dodgy election and the 24 assassination attempts. I think he sees himself as to be called almost by God to serve his country, and I think he's going to do that. And you can see with the speed that he's come out of the blocks to expose the corruption, and he really is draining the swamp this time,
Yeah.
and it's beautiful to watch.
And as you say, the speed with which he's doing things, I mean, within the first 100 hours, he did 300 executive actions, including measures on immigration and withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord. What do you see as the most significant early action, and how do you think that's going to shape his presidency?
Well, I mean, because the whole woke hydra, as I like to call it, is all connected. Each action is as significant as the next. I think for me, the one that's really shocked me because I didn't know it is this USAID stuff. I find that absolutely astonishing that US taxpayer money has been used back against them and against their better interests to poison and corrupt and to belittle the society. And the fact that is taking place, and it's and it's been going on for years, and that is the deep state. And then you think, wow, the deep state is global. It's everywhere across the West. They said they're actively spending money. We hear today that the Conservatives. I can't remember exactly what the system is, but it's like we've invested in asylum seekers to come into the country with our taxpayer money. I'm not clued up to that story, but here's one particularly to abolish, I mean, all of it, two genders, thank you. Two sexes even, thank you. I mean, why was this even controversial? The education reforms, when Musk has finished dealing with USAID, he's going to go into education, and they're going to stop sexualizing our children, which is, again, a very, very unpopular policy amongst parents. Where else? The border, taking control of the border. It's just all of it. He's going to re-sculpt society in the way that it was intended to be sculpted in civilized liberal Western democracies. And what generations of people have fought for, which got cast away over a very strange period between, I mean, it's been brewing for decades, but most active between 2015 and 2025, I suppose, in the last decade. He is going to, there was a full-blooded, wholehearted attempt to destroy the West. And they got to Trump and he didn't flinch. And so it's all of it. Everything he's done, I find wonderful.
Yeah, it is extraordinary. I mean, one of the extraordinary scenes in the last few days was Trump surrounded by all those young girls and women who, at long last, you can turn around and say, we can't have men in women's sport. That was a no-brainer, wasn't it?
Complete no-brainer. Again, very unpopular policy, but it shows who he is. He didn't sniff one of the young girl's hair, not one. Got through the whole thing without sniffing a young girl's hair, unlike the weird sort of senile cretin that came before him. You can see he's warm and he cares, and the Secret Service are obviously not happy about that. On the off chance that one of the girls has been, because they're going to really try and get him, aren't they, Trump? So I think that's why he's acting so fast as well. But that's another iconic picture following on from the trash wagon picture, following on from the McDonald's picture, and then following on from the truly iconic one of the fist in the air pumping, saying fight, fight, fight,
Yeah.
which I think won him the election in the end. I think the overreach of the left. Well, actually, Robert Kennedy really helped there too. But the overreach of the left is so much that they just won't stop at anything to kill, murder, and maim and destroy. And thank God for Trump for standing up to them, because there's hope in the world now.
No, absolutely. And as you say, the electorate are far more savvy than people give them credit for. And the more that he calls it out, there was that wonderful graph of the more that he threw at Trump, the more his popularity kept on rising. And it worked on that sort of basis. I want to look at some of the things. I mean, DOGE with Elon Musk. And as you know, Errol is a regular on this show. We unpack all of the stories with him. Wonderful, first of all, the pun on the name, the Doge, because he's got the Doge coin as well. And Elon is posting every 5 seconds, it seems as though, on X. And he's got this little wonderful cartoon of, rather than beware of the dog, he's got beware of the Doge outside, added the extra E outside of the White House. Now, he's attempted to shut down USAID, leading to legal challenges and concerns about national security. How do you assess that sort of side and the backlash to it?
Well, I think it opens up a conversation more broadly about foreign aid. If you look at the state of certainly Britain, the fact that they're cancelling fuel allowances, and they're talking about £22 billion black holes, but we're happy to give Mauritius 18 billion to take the Chagos Islands back. I think foreign aid needs to be looked at more broadly, and there is definitely a case for foreign aid for the old adage: give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day; teach a man to fish, he'll eat for forever. So there is an advert for that, but I think that foreign aid used to destroy the very fabric of your own country, and at the expense of your own country, is dreadful. My friend Larry Taunton's done a lot of work down in the Darien Gap, where there's a lot of USAID stickers, and they're encouraging people to go to America and to try and cross the southern border. So that's American taxpayers are paying for organizations to invade, to illegally enter your country. And I think there's no place for that in a modern society. And I think we need to. It's part of a national confidence thing. If we are confident in our nation, we'll be a successful and prosperous nation. If we're not confident in our nation, foreign aid is unhelpful, because we Labour are destroying our economy. So why are we giving any money away at the moment? I think we should be giving it to the Chile pensioners and myself.
Yeah. I mean, they always say charity begins at home, don't they? I mean, it's that's got to be right. But it's the resistance, and the more people resist saying, "Well, let's have a look at these expenditure. Let's see if we're really doing what we should be doing, and making sure the money goes to the right places." I always say that sunlight is the best disinfectant. Why do you think people are so opposed to this sort of scrutiny from Elon and his mob?
Because a huge number of them are benefiting from it. A million jobs were lost very, very quickly after the election. In diversity, jobs were lost very fast. And then, people got cushy little state jobs, and their job is to push the establishment narrative. And of course, they're going to be upset about it. There are other reasons why people would do it, which would be the socialists and the globalists, who just want a sort of borderless utopia where we all cuddle all day and are very happy, and everyone, to his ability to reach, communism. That sort of vibe is very popular among young people. It actually, weirdly, it's changing amongst young people, which we can get onto later. But it's those that hate life will, it's a very deep and spiritual thing to do what Trump is doing. He's thinking about the future well beyond his own death. And that's a very spiritual way of looking at life, to see that your life has meaning. Those that are opposed to all of this sort of stuff, they don't believe in meaning. They don't believe life has any meaning at all. So they're the ones that would stamp on your head. If there was a plane crash and you were trying to get out of the plane quick enough, they'd stamp on your child's head. They don't care about anything but the here and now. And therefore, they want to make the world in their image. And their image, as we're quite rightly taught in the Bible, although we are made in the image of God, we're deeply fallen people, and you don't leave this to human beings to sort out. Trump realizes the best thing that the government can do is get as far out of your way as possible. Same as Reagan. I'm from the government is the most, and I'm here to help, is the most dangerous line you're ever going to hear. That sort of thing.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And he's cutting down on regulations, so which has been sort of hampering innovation and so on and so forth. And obviously, Elon again has been sort of front and center trying to say all that sort of stuff. And one of the things they talked about is the mission, not just for this planet, but the mission to Mars as well. And Trump made a pledge that that's one of the things he's going to do, support Elon to make sure that we're going to land somebody on Mars before the end of this term. It does seem as though he's on this big land grab at the moment, not just on this planet, talking about, well, let's get Canada, let's get Gaza, now let's also have Mars. What's your take on that?
I think it's out of the deal stuff, isn't it? I think he's going. The Canada thing was, I assume, was to get rid of Trudeau, which worked. And Trudeau fell into that trap straight away. So at least we'll have a Conservative in Canada. I think Canada would probably be a blue state, worryingly, if it was to be incorporated in the United States. I rather like the Gulf of America stuff. It's a slap in the face to the wokeists who go, we're going to rename Ayers Rock Luru or whatever they're going to do. So why not rename the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America? Greenland is a fascinating one because strategically it's going to be really important, and Mars makes sense. There's a great line in Interstellar when he says we used to look up at the sky and wonder at our place in the stars, and now we look down at the ground and worry about our place in the dirt. And that's again indicative of what society has become. We've become so demoralized by the LGBTQ plus anti-racism woke crowd that, no one wants to have babies anymore. And also no one wants to celebrate that sense of innovation, of a sort of almost a meteor coming in from space and being caught in a cradle invented by one of Musk's companies. And it seems only logical to want to go and reach out to the stars again. Why not? That sense of adventure is what keeps young children happy before they had screens. They would work out, how could they jump over a stream that wide, or that was what kept people going.
Yeah,
A
and
sense of
you mentioned earlier that it's a great contrast between the positive attitude now in the US that Trump is basically championing, as opposed to the negative stuff that we have here with Starmageddon. What do you think we could learn from Trump?
Well, it worries me because I think I tweeted last night that I'm so pleased that Great Britain had a baby and that baby was America. I think they know the Americans could see the problem with a constitutional monarchy, or that we have so many difficulties to change anything for the positive in our country. Lots of opportunities to change things for the negative. But I think we could. I think there should be. I love things like executive orders. I think that, I suppose the King's speech could be remodified to be a set of executive orders. That would be nice, and they would be immediately ratified until the inevitable woke legal challenges would come. But I think we've got to learn that it's about service, and we've got to understand that we've also got to be very wary that as we swing away from the woke, what we swing ourselves into, because you don't want to swing around 360 degrees and end up with a right-wing wokeist, as we've discussed before. But the optimism, as I've always said, I don't really think there's a political solution to this problem. Kemi Badenoch's getting criticised a lot on social media this morning for saying you can't expect the government to do everything. I think she's absolutely right. It's not up to the government to do everything. The government should be as far away from you as possible. You should do it. If you want to change the culture in your city or in your town, then change it. It's up to you. You can do that with direct action and through pressuring whatever it is that you want change. You can't always rely on the government to do everything for you. And I think what Trump has done is he's empowered people with great skill and great talent to go out there and take things back, reclaim the very simple things that needed to do, border security and all that. Can it be done in England? I mean, if reforms polls are to be believed, then they'll have a good go at it. But it's such a long time away for me now to know what they're going to come up with.
And it's interesting because, as you say, immigration has always been the hot topic around the world. And all of a sudden, Labour are saying they're going to be coming out in the next few hours with a really tough policy on immigration. So we can start looking at that sort of stuff. Now, one of the things that Trump did in his first few hours was pardon the January the 6th defendants and also revoke security clearances for certain former officials, including Joe Biden, who can no longer have access to the White House. Do you view these moves as restoring justice or undermining accountability?
I think that the overwhelming majority. I think if someone was violent on January 6th, but the stories that we were told on January 6th themselves were such a hoax. You know, the Brian Sicknick, the Ashley Babbitt was the only person who was actually killed for a felony charge of going through a window. But if people committed crimes, people should face the consequences of their actions. But if someone walked into a building and they then spent the next 3 years or 4 years in prison being treated appallingly, people with diabetes being, and you've seen how some of these people have been released. I think these are political prisoners and they need to be released because we've got our own January the 6th going on up in Southport with our jailed Southport friends. And it's a very dangerous thing to create an insurrection out of thin air. And literally, there were, what happened to Ray Epps? I think Ray Epps was pardoned, was he not, by Joe Biden just before he left the White House, screaming, "Go to the Capitol, storm the Capitol." And there were at least 20 to 30 FBI people in the crowd anyway. So we never got the full story of January the 6th. They tried to present it like, the worst day in American history. You remember that speech where Biden was stood in front of he looked like the Emperor in Star Wars, and he was talking about MAGA extremists, and that's the most divisive rhetoric I've heard from the president. So I think we should. I think it's for those that really did wrong, of which I'm sure there are some. They deserve to be punished. But for the overwhelming majority who just peacefully walked into a building and picked something up, or just sat down on someone's chair, you don't deserve time in prison for that.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right in the conditions, because there are all sorts of parallels here. We'll come on to Tommy Robinson in a moment. But the idea of that, but also people should remember how many people Joe Biden pardoned, including those preemptive pardons. What's your take on those?
Well, how many were there? 5,000 by the
A
end?
crazy number. I think more than anybody virtually ever. I think they had a look at that sort of stuff. But preemptive ones, including for people like Fauci, including for his
Yeah.
own family, and so on and so forth.
Well, I mean, what does it tell you about Anthony Fauci that you need to pardon him? It tells you that the whole COVID scam was exactly what most people saw it to be. My dad, interestingly, has just got over a bug which took him a month to get over. It was really horrible bug, and it floored him. But no one was locked down for that, and it was much worse than anything COVID threw at him. So Fauci's a crook, and he belongs in jail. I don't know what the American processes are for holding him to account. I think he has to come clean. He can't. They can summon him, and he can't plead the fifth. I think that's the law in America. So I think we're going to get the truth, whether he's going to face any accountability or not. We've got our RFKJ going to go into hopefully HSS. So that means that, there's going to be, or sunlight is going to be the great disinfectant on what's been going on there, because I imagine that's very deep statey. I imagine a lot of people making a lot of money out of the flu season of 2020. So we'll see there.
Yeah, it is extraordinary, and this whole thing about a preemptive pardon, you're not even confessing what the crime might be. You're sort of saying, well, whatever you might have done, we're going to protect you.
There's something about the Americans. I've never quite worked out the pardon version, but I suppose it probably comes from a wilder time,
Yeah.
doesn't it? When people would take retaliatory justice against somebody unless they were pardoned. So it feels a bit outdated. But yeah, I mean, Biden pardoning his entire family. He was flying his son around the world to do deals with the Chinese on the off chance that Joe Biden got in to be American president. And then he saw, I think he's on record as saying that China was not a threat. It was a partner. I think he actually even said that. It's like, really? Which part of the Mao Zedong playbook have you not read?
Yeah,
So,
you're
yeah.
absolutely right. And talking about sort of economic and dealing with partners and so on and so forth, one of Trump's favorite words is tariffs. and looking at his sort of economic policy, he's sort of using that as a negotiating tool. It worked with a number of places, including Mexico and so on and so forth. He's now talking about this 25% tariff on steel, and a lot of people are retaliating. Obviously, the Chinese are turning around and say, well, if you put taxes on us, we're going to put taxes and tariffs on you as well. What's your view of all of that?
Well, I'm no great historian. I'm not a great American historian. I do love history. I'm I'm sure someone will correct me on this, but one of the greatest periods in American history was leading up to 1913, where the whole no one paid income tax because tariffs dealt with all of it. So if Trump is planning on abolishing federal income tax with tariffs, then great. As far as Chinese steel is concerned, China has been dumping crap steel across the whole of the West for forever, and we do nothing about it. We closed all of our steel production down in the United Kingdom, and Trump is going to bring steel production back to America, putting America first, which is what, if you said Britain first in this country, they'd immediately think you were a Nazi. And in America, they don't. They just think, great, yeah, I like you to put America first. So the tariffs I think are fine. I've got no problem with tariff. I just hope when he's finished really kneeling on the testes of his enemies, that he starts to kneel on the testes of Keir Starmer, because I'd like to see a few tariffs thrown. And there's already noise that some of the hate crime legislation is going to involve tariffs from America if Starmer goes through with that. And I think it's the job of the moral leader of the world, which is America, whether you like it or not. It is the job of that nation to teach other nations that live within its orbit of protection how to behave. And one of those things is not to bring in absolutely Orwellian hate speech legislation like our dreadful Labour government want to do.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, we spoke earlier. I mean, Elon, as I say, is front and center of the DOGE and all sorts of scrutiny, if you like, for spending, and quite right too. During the inauguration, that Elon did that sort of "from my heart to you" gesture, which is what it was. And I spoke to Errol, Elon's father, about that. It's all rubbish about the whole Nazi salute. Calvin, our mutual friend, did a very similar thing. Basically, maybe as an ill-timed joke. He must have been aware of the consequences and so on and so forth. But he was really just trying to highlight the hypocrisy, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was a carbon copy of the joke, from my heart to you. And if you look, and you don't have to look too hard, there's a lot of people on the left who've done that as well. It's not a Nazi salute. They tried to get Musk on it to test Trump's resolve. Trump's has no time for these people, the cancellors. So very sadly, in Calvin's case, which is absolutely appalling, the useless American Catholic Church have cancelled Calvin as a result of that. You can argue, and I have argued this with Calvin, whether to do that gesture, even in a mocking way, is provocative when you're wearing your priestly vestments. I mean, I think you can make an argument for that, but at the end of the day, it's so patently obviously a joke, and it just goes to show how out of touch the church are, because the church should be the moral backbone of any society. And so far, the church is across the West is supine and is appeasing ever growing ideologies that take themselves much more seriously. So it's trying to be inclusive of things which are actually pretty demonic, like the mutilation of children, and the celebration of the trans cult, because it's a cult. It's a religion in itself, child mutilation, and it's a sign of a degeneracy in society which we should all find it very, very worrying. So for them to cancel Calvin, I've got some news coming with Calvin which I can't tell you today, but I will tell you next time we speak. But yeah, I'm just ashamed to be a Christian sometimes. I mean, but at the end of the day, it does say in the Bible, when one or two or more of you gather in my name, then, I'm with you. So I just think the organized churches are a disaster, a disaster.
And is it good news or bad news about Calvin?
Good news.
Okay, well, I look forward to the good news. But you're right, and as Calvin said in his own tweets, he said it highlighted the particular event he was at, a pro-life event, and it was P.T. Barnum said, if you want to draw a crowd, start a fight. I mean, it was clearly meant as a joke. He was saying that he wasn't supporting the Nazi side. He was clearly trying to highlight the nonsense that was there. But it did make a lot of people think about that particular event, didn't it?
It did. And I think Calvin, I have nothing but huge and bottomless respect for Calvin. He has been persecuted and cancelled more times than anyone I know, including myself. And that's really saying something. And he's a true man of God, he is, but he's got a sense of humor, and he's a bit mischievous as well, which is a good thing. You don't want some sort of snotty vicar lecturing you about what God thinks you should think about trans people. You want a man of conviction standing up. In any other era, if and I'm just so sad that it's happened to him in Grand Rapids, which it's taken place. But in any other era, Calvin would be an Archbishop of bloody Canterbury. You
Well,
know,
no,
he,
and he certainly speaks to a lot of people in a way that people can relate to, which has got to be good. How's Calvin in himself now? I mean, it's obviously very depressing having this sort of side. How is he in himself?
I'm going to call him today. I spoke to him yesterday. He's all right. He's very down. He won't ever tell you how really down he is. But he's gone to Israel, I think, to see some people, and he's just sort of staying out the way for a while we put together a little plan for him, which will come be announced this week. And he just has to see it as all Christians have to see these things as that's it. This is part of his journey. And he is a man of a lot of faith, so he will be able to see this as part of his journey, and it will be for the best in the end. And I am, you know, I'm, I just, my heart is with him. I feel it's appalling the way he's treated. I hate the fact that no one gets behind people and doesn't support people on our side of the argument. And again, it just takes me back to that concern that we haven't solved these issues on the right in Britain or even in the centre, in the liberal world of cancel culture and free speech. We haven't solved those. But we've got a big reaction coming to wokeism, and that could be actually a pretty nasty perfect storm. But in terms of Calvin, it's just the man is courageous and he needs love and support, and he's got it, and he
Oh,
knows who his friends are.
absolutely. The outpouring of support online. There were the traditional sort of voices who you could expect to come out and say the things, use the opportunity to have another pop. But the love that was there, and well, I look forward to the good news. Finally, then let's talk about the other Robinson, Tommy Robinson, who you're also very close to. We had the big rally in London on February the 1st. A lot of support there. You got Elon Musk, who's been financing some of his legal team for some of the legal issues there. That's sort of front and center of Elon's support. And he withdrew his support for Nigel as a result of Nigel's attitude to Tommy. What's the latest with Tommy? How's he faring?
I've just been banned from going to visit him in prison. So I was meant to visit him last week, and I got a letter from the prison saying you're banned. And I took taken legal advice, and apparently it's not right that they've been able to do that. So I'm pursuing that actually with lawyers at the moment. It's very, very cruel. This is a victimless. I mean, even if you think it's a crime, which I think is contested, deeply flawed. This idea of him contempting the court when the court. Anyway, I don't want to contempt the court myself, but it's a victimless crime at the very worst. And you don't jail people for these victimless crimes. You just don't do it. And then to put them in solitary confinement on top of that, and then to on top of putting him in solitary confinement, then to stop visitation rights. He's a political prisoner. And he's going to come out of this. The problem is they're going to make him very strong and very powerful, because he's going to come out of this and he's going to come out fighting. And they're not going to shut him up. And so they're just making him more powerful. As you say, if you want to draw attention, start a fire.
No, no,
So,
absolutely. And
so
I
that's
was
right.
discussing, as I say, I was discussing this with Elon Musk and talking about the support for Tommy Robinson. And he was likening him to other political prisoners who then went on to become the leader of the country. So, in the same way as Mandela with South Africa, could you see Tommy Robinson as a future prime minister?
Um, I don't know. And in this topsy-turvy world, anything is possible. I don't think anyone can really predict what's going to happen in the next 4 years. We just don't know. We do know that Labour are going to try to make our lives immeasurably worse with all the time that they've got to do that. But what's coming, I don't think anyone can truly predict. There doesn't seem to be a very I see all of the reform support, and I notice all of that, but I think there are a few issues. And I've been contemplating this before, and Tommy's right about this as well. If you think about it, 5 years ago, I was when on Question Time about this time of year. Actually, I think it was. It was sometime, might have been early Feb, 5 years ago, and I said everything I said 5 years ago is completely acceptable discourse to be said in the centre ground of politics. It's completely fine. You're not a far right extremist for saying that Meghan Markle's a bit of a bore, for example, or for raising the issue of grooming gangs and child sex trade gangs, which I raised on Question Time, ironically, over everyone's head. I got cancelled for complaining about Meghan bloody Markle. Anyway, and now 5 years later on, you can see what's going to happen. We've seen the announcement of a Muslim Islamic party coming into Britain. And I definitely think there will be an Islamic party which stands in the general election in 2029, and I think it will score highly. I think Labour will try and appease it and try and keep most of the Muslim vote in quotes on side. But I don't think Labour will be able to, because the true nature of Islam is very different from what we're told. It's why it's very difficult to get a moderate Muslim. Where's the moderate Muslim condemning the terrorist attacks? It's like if you truly practice Islam, if you're a true follower of Islam, then you would be wrong to condemn the attacks that are committed in the name of Allah, for example. That would be wrong. So what we've got is you've got a lot of in the UK. You've got a lot of sort of cultural Muslims, who don't cover their faces and don't, aren't deep subscribers to the ideology of Islam. In the same way as you've got a lot of Christians who are just sort of cultural Christians who are sort of do unto others and, love thy neighbor, that sort of person, but aren't dedicated followers of Christianity. So when we see this ever-growing number of culturally self-isolated, true followers of Islam, and, with some pretty edgy views when it comes to when rubbing up against a secular liberal democracy like ours, essentially, you're going to have a problem, and I think the Labour Party are going to have a problem not having to separate themselves from some of the views. The appeasement tactic to Islam won't work. So you then get confronted with Reform, who have a Muslim chairman, and I've got a feeling, and I think just common sense tells us that this is true, that in 5 years from now, the thing that's going to be on the ballot box is Islam. As much as all the other issues, Islam is going to be on the ballot box because the Muslim population of Britain is skyrocketing, as Nigel himself quite rightly pointed out before, saying that I'm not going to do anything about it. I don't even care about assimilating people who hold views. You see, there's an argument to be made for making Britain a place where you can flee Islam. I think you could say, for those of you who don't want to pray 5 times a day and don't feel beholden to the Quran and certainly the more brutal aspects of the Quran, Britain is a haven for you, where you can be a Muslim in a cultural sense. You can believe that, but we won't tolerate Sharia, we won't tolerate blasphemy laws, and yet this is what's being muted.
Certainly, as you say, that's going to be front and center and an issue that we will keep returning to. But for now, Laurence, a real pleasure catching up. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.